In this video, we're going to look at the art of asking good questions. What are some of the pitfalls to avoid? And finally, I've prepared a list of 10 questions that you can ask your interviewer that's going to make him or her go, wow, that's a really good question. Coming up. Hi everyone, welcome back to Supercharge. My name is Sonal, an HR director, and this channel is all about sharing practical tips on how to supercharge your career. Now here I'd like you to think about an old mindset where you are sitting in front of the interviewer. It's been a monologue of an interview and the person at the end says, would you have any questions for me? And then you have maybe one or two polite questions and that's it, that's the end of the interview. The new mindset is, this is a dialogue, this is a conversation. And why wait till the very end to ask questions? Why not ask if there is something that's bothering you and you want to know something? It's a conversation and it's more natural. So when it comes to the art of asking good questions, I think Dale Carnegie said it best in his 1936 classic How to Win Friends and Influence People. What he said was, ask questions that the other person would enjoy answering. And that's one of my principles of asking good questions. That's number one. The other thing to keep in mind is think about a question as broadening the topic you're talking about and then deepening the topic. So timing, of course. This is a tennis match. It's a two-way street. That's the analogy I have in mind. It's like ask, answer, and always like that. And for me, that's the sign of an interview going well, where you've done as much talking as you have listened. So before we dive into the 10 questions, I'd like to talk about a few pitfalls that are shockingly common. The first pitfall is asking about salary, benefits, holidays. Not the time and place, guys. Not the time and place. The candidates don't ask questions. You say in the end, would you have any questions? No, it's all good. Pitfall that I've seen is candidates tend to stick to a script and stick to what is safe and it's mentioned in all the textbooks and videos. Another pitfall is asking something that Google can answer for you. Why bother? And finally is asking but not listening, because you're asking but in your head you're already thinking about the next question that you're going to be asking because you've made a list. When you ask, listen very carefully because there could be follow-up questions from there and then it'll be a very nice, smooth tennis match. And that's what we want, right? So that's it. Now let's dive into the 10 questions that I have made for you. They fall into 3 categories. I call it the CPR: company, position, recruiter, or interviewer, whatever you want to call it. So the first question, which is a good question about the company, is tell me about the organization and how is it different from its competitors? What gives it its competitive advantage, according to you, is where do you see this company going in the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? See what they have to say. Could be interesting. And then let's look at the position. When it comes to the position, one question you can ask is, who are the main stakeholders of this position? So you're broadening. And then you can ask, what are some of the key challenges facing these stakeholders today? This is a much better way of asking, what are the challenges that the organization is facing today? Or what are the challenges that the position is facing today? Those are a lot more common, but the one I've given you is different and makes the interviewer think a lot more. Another question that I really like, which very, very few people ask, is how would you evaluate my performance at the end of 1 year? How would you determine if it meets expectations, is below expectations, or is exceeding expectations? Because this tells you on their performance management principles, and it's always interesting. Another question you can ask related to position is, what are some of the low-hanging fruit that I could easily pick within the first 90 days? So your 3-month sort of agenda when you join, if and when you join the company, it's very interesting for you to know this. And then when it comes to the recruiter, there's a couple of questions you can ask. The first one, what are 2 things that you like about working here? I love that question. And say 2 things. Make it specific. It's your turn to ask questions. Have fun with it. And then I have 2 more questions which may be perceived as risky. It depends on your personality and it also depends how you think the meeting is going. What you can ask is, what are 2 things you like less about working here. And it's interesting to know because this tells you a little bit about the company culture as well. So rather than ask a boring question like, can you tell me about the company culture? Because it's so broad. Where do you start when you get a question like that? And then if the person sitting in front of you is going to be your future manager, another good question you can ask is, can you tell me something about your leadership style or your management style, how you like to work and how do you lead a team? Is always interesting, and you can determine if you think it's risky or not. I personally love this question, and these are questions that make me think when I'm in the shoes of the interviewer. And finally, towards the end, you're done. Rather than ask what are the next steps, because everyone asks that, what you could do is you could ask, so is there anything else that you need from me? Simple. So that's it. That's a quick summary. So remember the principles. Ask questions that are enjoyable to answer, and you go broader and then you go deeper. And remember, it's a tennis match. It's not a one-way street. So as much as possible, do the talking and the listening equally. And avoid those pitfalls that we talked about, where asking premature questions like salary, etc. are not needed, or not asking questions is not an option. Avoid sticking to a script, bring in a bit of personality and imagination. Don't ask simple questions that can be answered in Google. And when you ask, remember to listen. And then those 10 questions on the CPR, the company, the position, and the recruiter. Remember, the recruiter part of the interview, when you're asking the recruiter or the interviewer questions, can actually be the most interesting part of the entire meeting, in my experience. Human beings love to talk about themselves when given an opportunity, and particularly in today's noisy, digital, heavy world with information overload. When someone wants to know what I think, I'm flattered and I want to talk, and it becomes a real conversation. And then with so much talking, I may not even remember towards the end of the interview what it is that I did not like about your candidature. And that's exactly what we want. We want to make the interviewer talk as much as possible, listen, gather a lot of information, because it's our turn to ask questions. And with this approach, I'm pretty sure at the end of the meeting, you're going to nail it, because they can't think of any reason why not. So all the very best. I hope you enjoyed this video, and it goes without saying, if this was useful, share it with your friends, subscribe already. What are you waiting for? And give it a thumbs up, and I shall see you next time. Ciao!